picture yourself scrolling through your feed late at night.
Oh, yeah, we've all been there.
Right. And you come across this highly controversial post, something deeply polarizing. You don't like it, you don't leave a comment, you just, pause for about 2 seconds, absorb the tension, and keep scrolling.
You're just lurking.
Exactly. In your mind, you are a completely neutral observer. You didn't take a side, you stayed out of the fray.
Right.
But the reality is, the algorithm clocked that 2-second pause. It registered your attention.
It totally did.
And it categorized your hesitation. So it's going to serve you more of that exact same tension tomorrow. Basically, your attempt at neutrality was still processed as an action.
Which is such a wild thing to think about because we really cling to this idea that we could just opt out.
Yeah, that we can just be bystanders.
Exactly. We imagine life is like this physics experiment where we can stand safely behind thick, reinforced glass, watching the particles collide without ever being affected by the blast radius.
Yeah.
But when you step into historical moral philosophy, that observation glass just shatters. We are exploring a framework today where that safe, neutral bystander position simply does not exist.
Well, welcome to today's deep dive. We are exploring an archival text today, specifically a classic sermon transcript from a really prominent 20th century religious figure.
Billy Graham, right?
Right, Billy Graham. And I want to be clear up front, we aren't looking at this to debate theology.
No, not at all.
We are analyzing it because buried right at the heart of this historical speech is a surprisingly universal psychological argument, the total impossibility of neutrality.
Yeah, our mission today is really to unpack this core argument that human beings are just fundamentally incapable of remaining unaligned.
Right.
And from there, we'll explore his 3-part framework for finding definitive purpose. We are basically treating this archival text as a masterclass in persuasion.
And behavioral observation, honestly. Yeah. Exactly. Group dynamics, psychology. The insights here regarding human nature and personal commitment are profoundly relevant to you, the listener, regardless of your personal background or beliefs.
So to really understand this framework, we got to start with the core problem identified in the transcript. And interestingly, the primary danger isn't making the wrong choice.
Right, which is what you'd expect.
Yeah, the ultimate danger is attempting to make no choice at all. The argument suggests that a lack of definitive purpose doesn't lead to some, Zen state of peace and enlightenment. Instead, it creates a highly dangerous void.
The void, yeah.
The text describes it as a psychological and moral vacuum, one that specifically preys on youth and young adults.
The phrasing of that vacuum is chillingly precise, honestly, because we often equate emptiness with quiet or, rest.
Like a blank slate.
Right. But this vacuum is characterized by an agonizing restlessness. There's this really powerful reference in the speech to the writer Ernest Hemingway.
Oh, yeah, I love this part. Yeah, Hemingway once described his own internal state by saying, "I live in a vacuum that is as lonely as a radio tube when the batteries are dead and there's no current to plug it into."
Wow.
I mean, that is not a peaceful image. It captures the psychological ache of being unplugged, of just lacking the current of meaning.
I think we all recognize that radio tube feeling, right? It's like the modern Sunday scaries.
Oh, absolutely.
It's that low-level hum of anxiety when you're alone with your thoughts and you realize you're just sort of drifting through your career or your relationships without a true north.
Yeah.
But what makes this argument so compelling to me is how it takes that personal psychological ache and scales it up to a terrifying historical level.
Because dictators prey on that exact vacuum.
Right. The transcript points to the historical warning of how Hitler exploited the vacuum of unemployed, restless youth in Germany.
Millions of young people.
Millions, yeah. Without a motivating challenge, Hitler didn't have to convince perfectly content, purpose-driven people to do terrible things.
No, he just stepped into their void.
Exactly. He just handed them a cause and a flag to follow.
It's so dark. But dictators understand human sociology better than almost anyone. They recognize that the human operating system requires a master code. And this is backed up in the speech by the biblical assertion from Jesus that no man can serve 2 masters, meaning, you can't serve God and materialism simultaneously.
Right.
But the deeper philosophical implication there is that you have to serve something.
Yeah.
You are wired to serve.
You can't just serve nothing.
Exactly. The speaker even digs into the etymology of the word Christian, noting that it originally meant a partisan for Christ.
A partisan? Wow.
Yeah, historically that term was used as an insult, actually, like a term of derision.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, But the core truth he draws from it is that a partisan is never a neutral spectator. They are inherently, unmistakably committed.
Which, if we think about how nature abhors a vacuum, this explains so much about modern behavior.
Totally.
Like, we open an app in a moment of neutral boredom, a temporary vacuum, and our environment immediately rushes to fill that void with extreme, highly partisan content.
Yep. Outrage.
It hands us a micro cause to be outraged about for the next 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Because we are so deeply wired to need a cause.
The cause gives us a narrative arc.
Exactly. It gives us a tribe to belong to, a set of rules to navigate chaos. We crave direction so deeply that we will accept a destructive or toxic flag over no flag at all.
Right. And if living in a vacuum is that agonizing, and the consequences of it are that dangerous, it totally makes sense that human beings develop defense mechanisms.
Oh, for sure.
When confronted with our lack of a defining purpose, we desperately want to feel like we still stand for something positive, which leads people to grab onto their most common defense.
Sincerity.
The claim of sincerity, exactly.
We hear this all the time. Well, I might not have a grand committed cause, but I'm at least a sincere person.
Right. Yeah.
Or, I generally mean well, so I'm a good person. The logic in this archival text aggressively dismantles this defense.
It really does.
We move from the problem of the vacuum to the illusion of false solutions. And the speaker uses this really calculated blend of humor and striking analogies to just pull the rug out from under this idea of sincerity.
Yeah, the humor serves a very specific rhetorical purpose here. He clarifies that a true ideological commitment, in his context being a Christian, is not a demographic checkbox.
Right, or just polite behaviors.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He tells these jokes about different denominations to highlight how cultural labels mask an utter lack of commitment. Like he mentions this Anglican in London.
Oh, right.
Who proudly declares, I've been an Anglican all my life and nobody's going to make a Christian out of me.
That's so funny. Or the man on the street in Texas who, when asked if he's a Christian, says, no, thank God I'm a Baptist.
Yeah.
It's a funny line, but it exposes the absurdity of treating a profound life philosophy like it's a region of sports team you were just born into.
Exactly.
And it softens the ground for a much harder philosophical hit regarding this modern worship of sincerity.
Right, because we treat sincerity as the ultimate shield.
We do.
If you meant well, you are supposedly immune to criticism. But the transcript uses this brilliant, vivid anecdote to crush this. The speaker recounts watching an American football game at the Rose Bowl.
Oh, the Rose Bowl story, yeah.
90,000 people in the stadium. A player gets the ball, finds a gap, and runs with total, sincere determination.
Just going for it.
Completely the wrong way. He scored a safety for the opposing team and lost the game.
That is brutal.
But that player's internal feelings of determination and earnestness did not change the external reality of the scoreboard.
Right.
And then the speaker follows this up with an even more intimate story about his mother. When he was a child on their dairy farm, he had a terrible cough.
Oh, this one is crazy.
Yeah, in the middle of the night, his mother sincerely tried to give him cough syrup in the dark, but accidentally grabbed a bottle of iodine.
She gave him poison.
She gave him poison. Her intentions were pure love. But her sincerity didn't change the chemical reality of poison. She had to furiously pump him full of cream from their dairy cows to counteract it.
I love that concept of intent versus objective reality. Because it's exactly like putting diesel fuel into a gasoline car.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Right, like you can be entirely sincere at the gas pump. You can have the absolute purest intentions in your heart. You can truly believe you're doing the right thing for your vehicle. But the engine is still going to break down because the mechanics of combustion do not care about your feelings.
They really don't. The rhetorical move here separates the ego from the outcome. The speaker ties this back to a theological baseline, addressing that common claim of being a good person who keeps the Ten Commandments.
Right.
From his theological framework, the standard is absolute perfection. Breaking even one commandment means breaking the whole law. It constitutes sin.
So zero margin for error?
Exactly. To translate that into secular terms, objective reality doesn't grade on a curve. Sincerity cannot bridge the gap when you are facing an impossible absolute standard.
And the ego uses sincerity as a shield to avoid accountability.
Totally.
As long as you can say, well, I meant well, You protect yourself from the cognitive dissonance of your failures. You don't have to change your behavior. You don't have to make a hard pivot.
Yeah.
And the speaker spends so much time destroying the sincerity defense because he needs to force a crisis of realization. He strips away the comfortable middle ground so the listener is left standing on the threshold of a true, unavoidable decision.
And stripping away that shield leaves us with the next phase of the framework, which is choice and change.
Right.
Once the illusion of neutrality is gone and the defense of sincerity is broken, how do you actually cross the threshold into purpose? The text leans into this recurring historical and biblical motif to show that this choice is inescapably binary.
There is no spectrum.
No spectrum at all.
And the stakes in the historical examples he provides are incredibly high. It references Adam and Eve choosing a world without God. It points to Moses telling his people to definitively choose life.
That's right, yeah.
It brings up Joshua demanding, "Choose you this day whom you will serve." And the prophet Elijah challenging people who were halting between two opinions, demanding they pick a side between God and Baal.
Right, it's life and death. A broad road leading to destruction versus a narrow gate leading to life.
But perhaps the most striking example used is Pontius Pilate washing his hands of Jesus' fate.
Oh, yeah.
Because Pilate attempted the ultimate act of neutrality. He literally washed his hands, declaring himself innocent of the decision.
Going to stay out of it.
Exactly. But the text argues that Pilate's desperate abstention was ultimately still a definitive choice against the accused. Abstaining is a vote. A refusal to decide is a decision for the status quo.
It's that algorithm again. The pause is still in action. And once that unavoidable choice is made, the text argues it must be followed by change. But it defines this change quite radically. It's not about mere self-improvement or like habit tracking.
Right.
It uses the phrase becoming a new creature. In modern psychology, we might call this a complete identity shift or a paradigm reset.
A total operating system update.
Exactly. The argument posits this internal transformation as the only actual solution to external pressures like peer pressure or moral compromise. You can't just change your actions, you have to change your core operating system.
But this is where the archival text takes a really fascinating turn regarding human psychology, because it sets up these massive cosmic stakes, heaven and hell, new creatures, binary choices. But then the speaker shares his own deeply personal story of change.
Right.
And it is remarkably anticlimactic.
He really is. I mean, he talks about his own conversion experience as a teenager. He walks down to the front of a meeting expecting bells and lightning
A
flashes.
viral moment.
Right. He expects this dramatic lightning bolt moment of enlightenment, but he feels absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
All he feels is a deep, agonizing fear that his school friends are going to mock him the next day.
Which is so honest. The vulnerability in that anecdote is just brilliant persuasion.
It is.
He openly admits to feeling empty and terrified in the very moment he was supposed to feel divine clarity.
Yeah. The actual change didn't happen with fireworks in front of a crowd. It happened later that night. He goes back to his family's farm in the foothills of North Carolina. He looks out over the moonlit fields, gets on his knees, and basically utters a very simple, unpolished thought. Something like, "I don't know much, but please come into my heart and change my direction."
Wow.
And he notes that he just realized his direction had shifted. It was a quiet pivot.
By framing lasting change as a quiet shift in direction, rather than this lightning bolt moment, the speaker intentionally lowers the barrier to entry while keeping the stakes high. If lasting change required a mystical, earth-shattering emotional experience, most people would just give up waiting for the storm.
They just say, well, it didn't happen for me.
Right. But by defining change as a quiet internal pivot, a literal turning around of your trajectory, it democratizes the experience. Psychologically, it tells the listener that a monumental life change doesn't require a mystical feeling. It requires a mechanical reorientation of your will.
Which perfectly bridges us to the reality of the morning after. Because once the choice is made and you execute that quiet pivot, living it out in the real world is where the friction begins.
A pushback.
Yeah. And that brings us to the final part of the framework, the challenge, and how to handle the inevitable social pushback and internal doubts. The text does not promise an easy road. In fact, it explicitly references the concept of taking up a cross.
And it reminds the audience of the historical context of that metaphor. A cross in antiquity wasn't a piece of gold jewelry.
No, not at all.
It was a brutal, humiliating instrument of execution. To take it up means experiencing a form of ego death. It means dying to your own selfish ambitions and comfort.
And it applies this to very practical, modern fears. The speaker warns that when you return to your normal life, your school, your neighborhood, your workplace, you will face mockery.
You might lose friends.
You might stop getting invited out. And we see this today, right? If you decide to get sober, you often lose your drinking buddies.
Oh, absolutely.
If you shift your political or moral values, you face the very real anxiety of being exiled from your friend group or canceled by your community. You have to pay a social price for shedding your neutrality.
And beyond the social challenge, the text directly addresses the intellectual challenge, too, dealing with internal doubts.
Right.
It acknowledges a fundamental truth that a lot of philosophical arguments try to skirt around. You cannot put the divine in a test tube. You cannot empirically prove these concepts in a laboratory.
But it offers a counter perspective to that strict empirical demand. He brings up the story of Helen Keller, who was deaf and blind.
Right.
And the story goes that when she was first taught the concept and the word for God, she intuitively responded that she already knew him.
Yeah.
She just didn't know his name.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it points to an innate intuitive recognition of a higher order. And it pairs that with a classic watchmaker analogy. The idea that if you find a complex watch, its precision implies a maker.
Right. So the infinite precision of the universe implies a supreme being.
Exactly. Those arguments provide an intellectual scaffolding for the leap of faith. But honestly, perhaps the most difficult challenge to address isn't intellectual doubt.
No.
It's sociological doubt, specifically the critique of the institution itself, the hypocrite excuse.
Oh, the text tackles this head on. It confronts the common defense where people say, I refuse to commit to this path because the church is full of hypocrites.
Yep.
And the speaker's response is disarmingly honest. He basically says, yes, of course it is. There are hypocrites in every area of life.
He just redefines the entire purpose of the community. He explicitly states that the church is not a society of saints. It is a community of sinners saved by grace.
Wow.
He claims the one true requirement for membership is admitting you are entirely unworthy to be a member.
That's wild. And the analogy he uses to cement this idea of community is the live coal.
Oh, I love the coal analogy.
It's so good. He observes that if you take a live burning coal out of the fire and put it aside on its own, it will quickly die out and go cold.
Right.
But if you keep it gathered with the other coals, even if they are imperfect, they share heat and stay alive. Framing a community, in this case the church as a hospital for sinners rather than a museum for saints, is a phenomenal piece of sociological judo.
It really alters the baseline expectation of the institution.
Yeah.
I mean, if you walk into a museum and see a broken artifact, you are outraged because a museum's stated purpose is perfection and pristine preservation.
Obviously.
But if you walk into a hospital and see sick, bleeding, broken people, you aren't shocked. That's exactly who is supposed to be there.
Exactly.
By acknowledging that hypocrisy and failure are baked into the human condition, the speaker makes the community resilient to internal failure. Utopian communities always collapse because they require perfection.
Right.
A hospital model thrives because the presence of broken people doesn't invalidate the institution. It actually proves why the institution is necessary in the first place.
We've covered incredible ground here. We've watched the illusion of the neutral vacuum shatter.
We have.
We've seen the shield of sincerity debunked by objective reality. We've explored the quiet, mechanical pivot of choice and change, and faced the social friction of the challenge. This archival text ties this entire framework back to ultimate existential stakes.
It culminates in a massive final question posed to the listener. What shall it profit a man if he gains the whole world and loses his soul? It forces a calculation weighing temporal, material comfort against eternal spiritual reality.
And it grounds that massive philosophical question in real-world impact stories. The transcript mentions a 16-year-old runaway girl who heard this argument, made her choice, and the very next night came back to the organizers to say she was going home to reconcile with her parents.
Oh.
It mentions a young man who had just survived a horrific motorcycle crash. Lying in the hospital, he realized he had almost died without any faith, without any anchor in reality. These are people who stepped out of the vacuum and took the heat of the fire.
Which leads to the final summation of the speaker's call to action. After all the philosophy, the humor, and the theology, it boils down to an inescapable binary that strips away every excuse.
The decision is simply, I will or I won't.
Exactly.
I will or I won't. There is no, I'll think about it that doesn't automatically default to I won't.
So to leave you, the listener, with a thought to mull over that builds on this historical text but expands into your everyday life.
Yeah, please.
Take a hard look at your career, your habits, or your relationships. Where are you currently pretending to be a neutral bystander? You might think you are safely observing from behind the glass, but the reality is there is no glass.
No glass at all.
What dangerous vacuums are you inadvertently letting outside forces, algorithms, or toxic dynamics fill simply because you are refusing to make a definitive, committed choice?
The glass is an illusion. We are all in the room, and neutrality is just a myth we tell ourselves to feel safe. Until next time, keep digging deep.